So it's not working right now.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's showing that it's live, but it's just the screen just says live stream ended.
Hmm.
See if I can see it on the actual channel.
All right, we're going now.
It's live.
We are. I'm not sure what happened to our stream there.
Are we back up?
We are.
All right.
I don't know what happened there. We lost our connection.
All right.
Okay,
Well,
we're back.
Try to pick up where we left off.
yeah,
and we'll, hopefully
this
it won't
was-
happen again. I don't know what
remember
what happened.
Yeah.
a movie when we're talking about The Last Jedi. I don't remember a movie at that until that moment that had a bigger discrepancy. There's been movies that critics have not like. If the way Rotten Tomatoes generally worked
Yeah.
until that time was, there's movies that critics love and fans love.
Yep.
There's also movies that, okay, critic review 60%, but this is like an 88 for the fans.
Sure.
Like, fans love this, and critics like it's a pretty good movie, but
Very
maybe-
rarely do critics love it and fans hate it.
yeah, and this was
With that
critics
wide of a
91% or something at the time,
Mhm.
91, 92%, fans 30, and you're like, whoa. I've talked to people who don't like it. I understand that there's a lot of people who don't like it. It doesn't feel like 7 or 8 out of every 10 people that I was talking to
Yeah.
disliked it so much.
Right.
That, and again, because Rotten Tomatoes is not, you're not saying if I don't think it's an 8 or 9 out of 10, it's a rotten. They're like, no, it's I actively dislike the movie more than I enjoy that movie.
Yeah.
And it just felt like, whoa, this is something we've never seen before. And we're talking about the review bombing and everything. So it's an
Yeah.
interesting moment in fandom where there's like a before and after The Last Jedi, it feels
Yeah.
like.
Mhm.
It's BBY.
That's right.
No, it does.
BB Rye.
And I don't-
Or
Right.
Rye
Yeah,
Johnson.
BB Rye. And I don't know where it got cut off when I was kind of
Yeah,
saying
when
a
you were
little
live
bit there,
streaming,
but
or when we were-
But yeah, I agree. I mean, it seems like there was a pivotal moment with the rise in social media, the active hatred, getting clicks, the review bombing. It all seemed to come together on The Last Jedi. And then, yeah, I mean, I do think we're starting to see more of the entitlement from fan bases, and it has trickled into Marvel. We see that happening now too with like
Yeah.
the first, all the way up to Endgame was the original trilogy. And it was the OG cast. I mean, they had a bunch more people on the way, but as soon as RDJ and as soon as Chris Evans and some of these guys were gone, and then they go into the new phase of Marvel, it was, this is trash, this is bad, this is, and then it became the actively hating against. It was the Star Wars prequels of its time. It was the Star Wars sequels now. It seemed like the next phase, and people don't like it. They like the OG. They like the first run.
Yeah.
And it does seem like that's trickled into Marvel. I don't know how many other franchises have experienced it, but yeah, The Last Jedi, for whatever reason, and I think the distinction is people recognizing you don't have to like it. That's okay. Like, you don't have to like the movie, but it's the active
It's
hatred
active-
towards
yeah.
those who do, or
Telling other
the
people you're
active
wrong for
review
liking
bombing, or
this.
you're
Yeah.
wrong, yeah, or
Mhm.
like my opinion's right, you're wrong, this is terrible. See, even Mark Hamill doesn't like it,
I also feel
which
like
is fine. Mark Hamill he's allowed to not like it too.
Totally.
I mean, he
And we'll
doesn't
get
have
into it
to,
because
to
I think
like
there
that
are
either.
some legitimate things that I understand, like why this would be hard for him. Like there
Oh,
are
yeah.
things there, and it also led to, and then I really want to get Uncle's thoughts on this too. It feels like it's also led into this overgeneralization of, okay, now like it's so funny how something can happen, or some movie can come out, you don't like it, that puts you in a perspective where now I am actively going to these movies, and I feel like people started going to Star Wars movies with their arms crossed, going, You better blow me. Like now I'm coming in. I already
Yeah.
don't like it unless you're going to do something to blow me away, which
Yeah.
is before it was kind of like I'd go in with an open mind. I'm excited. And I walk out. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying every one of was as great as the next or
Yeah.
anything like that, but
We saw that
that
with the
immediately
TV
started
shows
tainting
too.
the TV shows. That's what I was getting at here is Mando, boom, everyone says home run. Season 2, home run. We're excited about it.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I've heard people even in the last month, some of these people who are talking about still Star Wars and Disney, and people saying, well, yeah, I mean, everything, but everything, of course, post like Rise of Skywalker or everything post Last Jedi is just trash. And I'm like, wait, you did you forget about Andor 2 months ago? Did you forget? And then on one of these shows,
Or
someone was like,
Mando,
you don't like Andor? And they're like, well, no, Andor is amazing. That's maybe the best thing since the original trilogy. And they're like, okay, what about Skeleton Crew? Like, oh, I forgot about the show. Yeah, that show's amazing. Like, okay, so you like those two.
Mandalorian.
Oh,
Right.
Mandalorian. Well, the first
Right.
2 seasons are incredible. Okay. Well, what'd you think about Obi-Wan? Obi-Wan was You're like, okay, so you don't hate it. You're just like, it was a little underwhelming for you. Yeah. What about Ahsoka? Well, same thing. It was just kind of, I don't like hate it. It's just underwhelming. Like, it's what the people are saying. Like, okay, what did you hate? You strongly dislike the Acolyte. Like, this is what this person
Yeah.
is saying in this video. They strongly dislike the Acolyte. They thought that Book of Boba Fett was not great. The rest were a couple of them were in the middle. Andor was incredible. As seasons 1 and 2 of Mando were incredible. Skeleton Crew is incredible. You're like, what I'm hearing there is a lot more positive than negative. But what is grouped as Disney Plus Star Wars stinks or Disney Star Wars
Yeah.
stinks. And you're like,
Yeah.
even saying the words like Disney Star Wars, you're like, you're the same people who also were obsessed with Rogue One when it came out. Like some of these people that they're like, all Disney stuff stinks. You're like, I promise, because I watched your channel at the time. You didn't hate that when it came out. You loved it. You didn't hate Force Awakens when it came out. You loved it. Some of you didn't even hate Rise of Skywalker, and now you say, "Oh, well, the whole sequel trilogy is trash." Like, you said that you loved it.
Yeah.
So it's
It's-
just you fall into
it's a
this
movement, yeah.
it's easy to get on the hate train. And again, we'll get into. I think that as we transition here, I think that some of the things that Mark Hamill would have a problem with, I actually understand. Like, I don't want to say like when I went to the movie theater, I wasn't caught off guard by the portrayal of Luke. I was initially. I was like, oh man, this is not what I thought we were gonna get. Now I have to adjust.
Yeah, I actually enjoy. I remember the first time walking out of The Last Jedi, and my first thought was, I don't know how I feel about this movie. I didn't hate it, but I was like, I like actually am like processing what I just watched. And then I watched it again. I started connecting more dots, and I started giving Rian Johnson a little more credit because I started noticing a lot more ties to A New Hope and Empire than I saw just at first glance in the movie theater. I think there's a lot more connectivity to the original trilogy than people probably give it credit for. And then honestly, I watched The Director and the Jedi, and it made me like it even more.
yeah,
But that wasn't the way I originally like my first. I'm almost the opposite of a lot of people that saw a lot of people the first time saw it were like, that was so different, crazy, loved it, and now they're bashing it. Whereas I didn't really bash it, but I was like, I don't really know how I feel, and then I started connecting more dots and saw The Director and the Jedi. But
Uncle, what do
Yeah.
you think when you hear? Because we giggled when we were listening to
Right.
Mark Hamill. One of the things that's funny about listening to Mark Hamill is in the same sentence. I mean, like, like
I don't.
I
Yeah.
don't like I don't know why people took my comments about like I just what I'll express was like I fundamentally disagree with him becoming a suicidal hermit. You're like
Right.
Mark, again, the word choice
the word
Right.
choice
is
yeah.
like that's even that I don't agree with that characterization of Luke. So it is funny, like it's funny hearing Mark Hamill because I don't think he means it. Like I think he's speaking his mind.
Yeah.
And he's being honest of like how he feels about it. But it's funny. He'll and then I've seen even a longer version of that same interview that I couldn't find last night when I was sending it to you guys. That added just a couple more comments in him saying like, all I said was, Ryan, he wouldn't do this. He's that's not Luke. He's the one who threw down his lightsaber, but because he knew his dad could come back. And then Ryan goes, yeah, but now he's lost his academy because this, and then he said, and then I'd say, Ryan, he watched entire planets blow up. He would not just lose his resolve. He'd double down. And so anyways, that's what we were like he's still like kind of
Right.
fired up about it, but it's funny.
Yeah.
How do you feel when you hear him like kind of in the same sentence be like, I don't understand why people
You
have,
know-
and then I go into the reasons.
You know what bugs
Um,
me about Rotten Tomatoes? I'm gonna get a little angry
Do it,
here.
do it.
A bunch of non-creative, whiny people who have no ability to create anything unique complain about art as if it's not good enough.
Mhm.
It drives me crazy. Non-creatives don't understand that creatives disagree. They
All the time.
argue. That's how great you think John Lennon and Paul McCartney got along all the time? They disagreed all the time. They were
Yeah.
at odds all the time. And
Some of
that
the greatest
tension,
works of all time have
Yeah.
tension
I
behind the
promise
scenes.
you that Ryan gave a little as well,
Mhm.
because that tension is that's where creativity lives
Yeah.
Yeah.
in the debate. So when Mark Hamill explains this, he's speaking as a creative who knows that's how it works.
Yes.
He's
Yeah.
forgetting these cretins that are in their basement that don't realize that that's how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they think you
yeah.
have to agree with everybody all the time. Otherwise, it's
Yeah.
chaos.
He's putting
Yeah.
that out
No.
there, and people are like,
He's
"What a
just-
disaster!" That's what
they-
was going on. He's like, "No, that's how this works.
That's
like,
what
this
we
is
what we
do. And he
do.
was
They-
being
They
honest.
speak their mind.
Yeah.
He
They
was being
tell,
honest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So, but he's wrong.
yeah, yeah.
I think Mark Hamill's 100% wrong. And when I left the theater, I didn't have a single problem with it because
Yeah.
I remember what Yoda did.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I actually think
And I
it is
remember
consistent.
what Obi-Wan did.
Yeah.
Neither of these guys ran into the fight. They all went off by themselves,
They all
lived in the
fled,
desert. That's what
Yeah.
they all did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So, and
and he
granted,
comes back at the end. I think people always forget.
They all
the
did.
discussion with the Last Jedi.
That's how they
is
all-
always
He becomes the hero.
Luke quits. You're like, no, Luke steps away, and the whole point of the Last Jedi is also to give to give, I don't know if like agency or to give power to Rey,
right.
to show the importance of Rey being the one to drag our most beloved hero, Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
Even encourage Luke Skywalker, that she gets through to him and that gets him back in the fight,
Yeah.
is actually I think that people forget that if Luke is a video game steadfast, nothing changes, we don't need Rey to be the hero
Yeah.
of that story.
It's a choice.
It's interesting.
This is
like,
Yeah.
that's the
it's
choice.
one of the reasons that it shows her importance is because
Yeah.
of that, but then also him being the ultimate hero by coming back at the end and doing it. Now, having said that, I heard a couple people talk about this that I respect their opinions about it, and I thought it gave a good perspective that I think will help maybe give Mark Hamill some grace here, because I do like Mark Hamill. I don't think he comes about this in a
Yeah.
negative from a negative space.
I think he
Um,
admitted that it made sense.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
said after I watched it, it made sense. Now,
That's what
I
I
do
did.
think
To
what Uncle
defend
said
him.
is true too, in terms of like he understands the creative side. And the
Yeah.
process
You
of
you
it.
argue, you debate, you
Maybe
say
not
what you
recognizing
think.
that everybody at home does not see that.
They
See it
think
that
we
way.
all it's
Yeah.
all big.
Yeah.
Everybody just agrees. They
So
don't.
on I had seen some people talk about this a couple weeks ago, and on the Force Center podcast, it was
Yeah.
Ken Knapsack
Yeah.
and Joseph Scrimshaw. Joseph had a great. He said just like a little bit of, if I had to put myself in Mark Hamill's perspective, like if I just tried to, and again, this is not. I'm not saying this as like someone who knows Mark. This is just if I had to guess what he feels.
Yeah.
I would guess that he's coming from this sort of a spot, which makes sense. And I thought this was a really good thing that they mentioned, which was very few people, maybe even very few actors, have ever been in Mark Hamill's unique position, which are he represents one of the most famous fictional characters in the history of the world. A character that he has the unique chance that most people never do, of almost 40 plus years later, he's coming back and revisiting a character that now the people who are watching this have lived with this character their entire life. Most people have.
Right.
And that he has spent decades, and this is not like an ego thing, he has spent decades having real conversations with people who have been like, I've gone through this tragedy, and the hope of Luke Skywalker has actually improved my life. As silly as we say that is with movies sometimes, they make a huge impact on people's psyche, and whether it's something as trivial as, you know, I'm working out and and I sometimes think of a Rocky Balboa workout montage, like I have a little bit of extra juice today because I'm thinking about that moment in a movie that gets me fired up. But there are people who are like, and again, they talk about this in the podcast. There are people who come up to someone like Mark Hamill and share an actual
You
real
changed my life.
tragedy.
Yeah.
They share these tragic stories of like, I lost a limb in a car accident, and I knew I was okay because Luke's right there with me. Luke's lost a limb and he's okay. And like, or I lose a loved one, or I have a father that, you know, I have a strained relationship with him, and I keep fighting for it because I know that Luke did, like, and things that you sometimes, and so they mentioned this in here of, if I'm guessing, it is hard for Mark because from his unique point of view, like, I do understand, while it may not be the best creative choice storytelling wise for Luke not to change, I could see Mark being like,
I don't want it to change.
I want him to be this steadfast, always the hero character, because that's what he represents to some people, and I don't want to let them down. And I don't want people who have told me like this is the hope they get is from Luke Skywalker to then see him in a situation where he's not as hopeful. And I understand, and when you say that, there's some, like, I can like empathize with that, of like, oh, I understand him feeling the weight of this, especially now as a guy in his 60s, close to 70 or however he is, now, but even coming back to Force Awakens, it's a unique situation that they're getting the band back together. They're doing all this. Oh, there's the iconic black and white photo of their first table read when they're all sitting there.
Yeah.
And then stories start to come out afterwards of like, I can only imagine what Mark Hamill feels like if they're doing this. And then at the table read, this is what came out afterwards. At the table read, JJ hands, Mark the thing, and Mark is the narrator. And Mark's narrating the table read because he's not in it. He's not in the movie. Like,
Yeah.
he is one shot at the end of The Force Awakens, standing there with a beard, looking like almost scary. And I could see him going, hold on, what's happening here?
Right.
Like, I'm not only like a part of the original trilogy, I'm Luke Skywalker.
I'm not the one.
And
that's
we've just gone on this press tour. I'm part of the press tour for this movie, and now I'm not even in it. And like, I can immediately being like, whoa, this, like, okay, reality check. This is not the same movie maybe I thought I was stepping into. And then don't worry, like, you're the star of the next one. And then the star of the next one is he's going to go through a horrific trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And that in itself is going to be uplifting to people because you're going to see him come out on the other side. But it is not going to be.
Yeah.
It's not the same Luke Skywalker that we know, but he's not in the same place that we left off with him,
Yeah.
and that can be a hard thing. So when them talking about it, I could see a guy, and I think you see it in his interviews, especially around the time of him being like, man, like, I don't know how people, like him being worried of, I don't know how people are going to respond to this Luke Skywalker. And I'm worried that as someone who is really attached to this character, understandably so, that people will feel like I personally let them down, even though I'm just portraying the character and his vision. So I think there's some truth to that, of even if I think that him staying the same character as a 20-year-old, as a 60-year-old, is not good storytelling, because I don't think anyone is the same person at 20 as they are at 60. I also understand from the human nature of him maybe grasping and like holding on to that and feeling like, I'm worried if we veer from this too far because of what he means to people. So I thought that was interesting.
It is. And I totally get that.
Interesting thing to think of, that I think both validates maybe how he feels, while also saying, but also I like Ryan's choice as a director and as a creative who needs to push the story forward. This is not the adventures of just reminding you that Luke Skywalker is exactly who you're reminded of. It's how do we make Luke grow? Just like, how do we make Luke even more human, which at the end of the day makes him more relatable to us, as if Luke is human, who does extraordinary things, and not some video game character that you can't relate to because he just is not relatable. Like, so I think that's an interesting way of just looking at the conversation. And then last part of this, his now let's get into maybe the more goofier thing. His actual backstory that he came up with. What do we think about the backstory that Mark Hamill came up with for his side backstory of
Somebody
Luke?
already
Yeah,
wrote that
all
in a
that.
book.
Yeah,
It was already he was already married.
he's already married. I think that I
He didn't die, but
no
Mary
yeah,
Jade is
Mary Jade.
a
Yeah.
well-known part of the.
The
and he's-
legend.
and he's
yeah.
aware of Mary Jade.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
he
think
is.
that, and I don't want to now because I've said just kind of like defended him. I will just go on the limb and say I think that his version is horrendous. So
Yeah.
I am so glad. This is again why actors are not necessarily always the people in charge
Well,
of the.
yeah,
I mean the picking up of a lightsaber, having a toddler,
right.
and then his wife killing herself because of this.
Mhm.
Disney would be like, we can't do that. Like
Yeah.
I like.
Yeah, I
do I
think
like
yeah.
so.
I
don't
I
think
hear
that,
that.
would work.
I hear that, and I think that's like his headcanon of getting into the character.
Yeah, you just use what you can.
Totally.
He's
to
using
find the
what he
place,
can
yeah.
to justify him acting and getting
Yes.
into a place of feeling that low.
Now, having
But-
said that, I
Right,
think
right,
his
right.
motivations are the same. The motivations of that, while one is super dark, I think his motivations of where his head are is the same as his nephew who
Similar,
turned
yeah,
to
yeah.
the dark side, and Luke feels like he failed him.
He
and,
failed
and
him,
all
yeah.
this stuff. So I feel like while that's much darker, I feel like you still get to the same place, which is he's lost hope
You do, in fact.
because he feels like he has failed the people he was there to protect.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. I mean, I
interesting.
don't. Yeah, I mean, there's no way Disney could have ever made that.
No.
no.
That I don't think that plays as well on. I mean, I don't think that plays probably that well on screen in general because now you're explaining this backstory of why he's there without really walking through and living that
Mhm.
out.
A drummer
don't
friend
know.
of mine used to play big band music, and he would build tracks to play to, and they were Michael Jackson tracks.
Mm.
That's what he played to in his
Yeah.
his
his
ears.
ear.
Did anybody know that?
No.
But that groove helped him lock. That
Yeah.
was the point.
Yeah.
So he
That's what helped
used
him get there.
this. I
Yeah.
wonder if Sir Alec Guinness went that deeply into this process.
Like Guinness is famously known for not
Just
necessarily
act
being
like you're
talking
on a
about not being
planet.
on board.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
People talking about
or
Mark
did
Hamill
Frank
trashing
Oz
it.
need to get there for Yoda? Did he need to? Did
Yeah.
he need that? Did he need that?
And people forget that
True.
Alec Guinness
Different.
was famous
It's
for
different.
saying like, I don't really want to talk about that silly space movie I was in.
Yeah,
Like,
right,
he
right,
didn't-
right.
he didn't-
Yeah.
he
To be
wasn't
fair, Mark
big.
Hamill, I think in The Last Jedi is the best acting I've maybe ever seen.
Yeah,
His
he
acting's
did,
from him.
incredible.
he did great, and he's feeding off of that feeling,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
great.
Uh,
I think the it sounds like the complaints are that they didn't get fan service.
Mm.
That's what it sounds
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
You didn't do the Luke that I want you to do.
Yeah.
That's fan service. You didn't give me what I want Luke to be. Well, that means they're making the movie so that Luke can be a certain thing.
Yeah.
Ryan Johnson had the nerve to actually make a movie
Let's make a movie and let's
and
actually
use
push
the
these-
characters to tell a story,
Yeah.
Yeah.
not just portray a character the way we
Yeah.
wanted it to be portrayed.
Yeah.
That's what. So I walked out
Yeah.
thinking, oh, but I was
That's
never. Sorry, Mark. I was never a big Luke Skywalker guy.
Mm.
I was never. Han
You're a-
Solo
yeah.
was my.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That character resonated with me just because I thought, I don't know, it didn't.
And you're like, I've already dealt with 10 times over the years George Lucas changing who Han Solo is.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I've had to deal with George
Yeah.
Lucas changing Han.
Well, I know we've got some in the
Constantly.
helmet stuff here, so we'll wrap it up. But let's maybe the final parting message to those who listen to the whole Last Jedi thing there is that in the video, what Mark is getting across and says at the beginning of the video and at the end is, don't take this as I dislike Ryan Johnson. He said, quote, he's one of my favorite directors. And
Yeah.
in the longer version of this, he said, he starts going through his movies. He's like, Brick, Looper, what he's done on Breaking Bad. Like, I'm a huge fan of Ryan Johnson. and
yeah.
he
I mean,
was
there's
a
no question
pleasure
Ryan
to work with.
Johnson.
Yeah.
I struggled with some of the creative choices just because of where I thought the character was. I love Ryan Johnson, and so any of those people who are, I wouldn't watch Ryan Johnson even if it was not attached. If it was a Star Wars movie, it had nothing to do with original. You know, if he was original story, I wouldn't watch it. You're like, well, then you're just hating just to hate. Like,
Yeah.
okay, like that's you can do that if you want, but like
I would
There's also a
love
guy
for
who's-
Ryan
who has
Johnson to
since
come
done
back and
Knives
create
Out
more
and has
Star
done all
Wars.
these things. That would be
I think
cool.
it'd be great.
I would love.
I would
and,
too.
and
Original.
and we've gone down this road before, but it's more than just it's the creatives coming up with stories and continuing that story from where they left off from someone else. It's
Yeah.
very challenging, and
Yeah.
not having control of the story beginning to end. And if and I hope he does, Ryan Johnson ever is able to come back to Star Wars, I think it'd be cool to give him his own, whether it's a trilogy or just a standalone movie, beginning to end story in the universe.
I forgot he
Would
did
be-
say recently. I
would be cool.
screenshot it, and he had a recent interview where he mentions that still on my bucket list is for sure. I would love to come back.
Yeah.
He said I've
Yeah.
learned through that. Like, just I'm not turned off by that experience.
No,
at
it
all.
doesn't
He's-
scare him,
and
like,
he
he's-
even said that I'm not turned off by the experience of Last Jedi at all. I loved it. It was a dream come true.
Mhm.
People reacted
Well,
to
it's-
it a
you know
certain way.
why?
I would come back. He said I would come back to Star Wars in a heartbeat, which I love because
It's
I always
because
worry
he's a
about,
fan
like,
of Star Wars.
Yeah.
yeah.
He likes it.
You'll say what you want about Ryan Johnson. There's no question he loves Star Wars.
Mhm.
Now you can disagree with how he took some of the story, but he's always talked about how he's a huge Star Wars fan, and
Yeah.
not just saying it. You can see it in the way that he
Right.
talks to Mark Hamill, and the way that he talks to these guys, and talks about even just his life growing up and the impact that Star Wars had with him. And
For sure. All right, we've got
let's
we
do
got
some.
less than 15 minutes before I've got to have a
Let's
hard
do
stop
some,
today. So
uh,
these are going to be the most rapid fire we've ever done for in the
Or
helmet.
you
In
can
the
just do a
helmet.
couple.
Let's
Yeah.
do it. So maybe grab one now. We'll be ready to go. I'll grab one. Pass one to Uncle here, and we will spend less than a minute on each of these here, and let's get to it. When you're ready, you can read one. Uncle, you can go first here.
Yeah. What will Lucasfilm do for the 50th Star Wars anniversary in 2027?
Ooh, Kathy said
For the
in a
50th?
recent. Kathy said at one of these. I can't remember what the
Kathy's
convention
out.
was.
What surprises?
Can't trust her.
Kathy said we are already thinking about the 50th, and we understand the magnitude of it, and we want to go big for the 50th. And then they followed up and said, "Can you share what that
No.
means?" And she said, "No."
I'm just
She's
curious what you
smiling,
guys
so-
think they might.
And when is that again?
2027,
2027.
May 2027.
Is that
Starfighter?
Starfighter?
Starfighter.
Starfighter. But are they going to
yeah,
do
do
anything
something
to
extra.
go
Yeah.
maybe Star Wars
Didn't they
Celebration
announce
that
that
year?
is the next celebration is not until
Yeah.
Yeah.
20?
Which are we
said
gonna somehow
2027.
pull that off to where we can all go? Because that would be.
Where is it this
incredible.
time? Do we know?
Is it
I
back
think-
in Anaheim?
Did they announce where it
Can't
is?
remember.
They-
did
they-
announce.
I
Yes,
think
they
it's
did
back.
announce.
I think it's back.
That'd
They
be
did
awesome.
announce.
I think it's back in Anaheim.
I'd be excited.
Hello, Anaheim.
Hello, Anaheim. This is I love Star Wars.
Hayden.
Yeah.
If you could change one thing about Star Wars, what would it be?
Ooh,
I would change
Luke Skywalker in the
Luke Skywalker's
The Last Jedi.
suicidal hermit. No, if I could change, I would just say
I didn't think he was suicidal, by the way.
No, that's
No,
not-
I didn't
don't
think so
he's
either.
he never mentioned.
he was because that's what he.
Yes, I know.
That's what he had.
That's
in
the
mind.
thing. Yeah.
He
Um,
he was. It was a selfless act. It wasn't self.
No.
Yeah.
He
yeah.
left to protect.
Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
see him as
Yeah.
suicidal. Hermit,
Yeah.
for sure.
Hermit. Definitely.
But if we're going hermit, well, I mean, how else can you categorize Yoda and Obi-Wan? They're
Yeah.
hermit.
Yeah.
They
Mhm.
both completely removed from the fight. Yoda to the point where he never comes back to the fight.
Yoda with less of
Yeah.
a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
So yeah, what would I change about Star Wars? I think I would change the budget of the Obi-Wan show.
Oh, really?
Actually, yeah.
like
I
me,
agree.
just me, or like it was also not just the budget, but it was during COVID. Like it was
Yeah.
a hard. I know that
That was a
if you
tough
look at any of the
time.
production
Of
pictures from
any
that,
show,
it's
it
them
should have
training
been.
in the COVID masks, and they're trying to do all like. It's just I know they had to try to power through with that.
Yeah.
That I think that caused some of that. To
I think
feel maybe a
Euro was
little
like, we'll
rushed and
just
everything.
wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good, I go just wait.
Yeah.
So
I
think that
yeah.
a little more
Yeah.
time with that would have been great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I would have had Luke kill the Emperor.
Yeah, instead of
Nate?
you mean you mean instead of him coming back?
Yeah, in episode 6, just kill him. No, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do that.
You mean right now?
I
Just
I do think it's interesting. Hey, let's make a murder mystery Star Wars. Oh, Ryan Johnson? No. Wouldn't it be cool if Ryan Johnson had directed The Acolyte?
Yes, if
Had
Ryan
been
That
the
would've been
showrunner
great.
for The
That would-
Acolyte? That'd have been
that would have
great.
been really cool.
It's kind of a
That'd
murder
have been
mystery.
awesome. Yeah.
So maybe that.
That'd been really cool.
Yeah.
I think I probably would have changed a little bit of Mando season 3.
I think
Not
so.
like not like big thing, but
Skadoosh.
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 I would
I
have
think
changed
also-
Mando season
I
3.
think that there are some. I don't know if we'll ever find out the real details of it. I
Yeah.
think some of it, some I almost said Diego Luna, different actor. Some Pedro Pascal conflicts. I think
Yeah.
it feels like
Yeah.
butted up against some of
Yeah.
the plans where then they had to go a little more voiceover,
a little more mask on.
because it felt a little abrupt that it was leading towards mask off at the end of season 2, and
Yep.
then it's now atone for your sins and everything you felt like you were learning as far as from that perspective.
Yeah.
Kind of
I
go back
would.
to it,
Yeah.
which made the armor character like I still can't figure her out. Kind of.
No.
Um,
I would have had another movie by now.
Another movie. Change it to get another movie.
More film and less. Well, I don't want less TV shows, but if
Right.
it were one or the other, more movies.
More movies.
This says, speaking of Mando, should Mando season 2 have been the end of that story?
Oh, there you go. Could have been.
Should Mando season 2 have been the end of that story?
I would say no. It could have been, but there was so many things I wanted to know
Mhm.
still.
Yeah.
I would say
It would have had to
let's,
wrap up a little differently if
yeah.
it were.
yeah.
But I do think it's a lot of the openness of Mando becoming who he was and Grogu could have been.
Nor do I think from a business perspective they were ever going to end
No.
that, nor should they when it's the highest merchandising thing. And
Yeah.
like, it's like they weren't going to end that on this major high.
Yeah.
Versus like let's keep just like they're still doing the movie and stuff now. Yeah. No, I agree
Yeah.
with that. I agree with that. How would the galaxy have changed if Luke killed Kylo?
Luke,
How would the
well,
galaxy have
billions of
changed?
people would have survived, that's for sure. But
Oh, you mean like if he had killed Kylo at that
Yeah, at that
in
moment,
that moment?
before he ever.
now it would have been the wrong
Kinda.
decision, but he wouldn't have gone on to blow up a ton of planets. Maybe Luke would have been because he probably would have turned to the dark side.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Don't know.
Yeah, I think it depends on if word gets out that Luke killed him.
Yeah.
He had a tragic accident. I mean, no, I think it would have been detrimental to the galaxy if Luke, just even internally,
Yeah.
if he had done that.
Hmm.
Who knows what that turns into of him spiraling, or
Yeah.
even for Luke, like dark side tendencies creeping in and those types of. I mean, we've seen Luke battle temptations of the dark side throughout Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
I like to think of the dark side as like sin in general. Like I don't think
Yeah.
you just conquer the dark side and now, yeah, Rey. I mean, Rey constantly is like doing this, and then like for Rey and Luke and any of these Jedi, I think you're
These
constantly
thoughts
checking
start
your
creeping,
negative
yeah.
impulses and
Mhm.
checking because that's trying to pull you over the edge
Yeah.
to do stuff
Right.
that you shouldn't do because it'll lead down a slippery slope. So I think that could lead to a really dark path for Luke if he had done that. Because talk about the guilt he has of almost doing it, think of
Mhm.
the guilt he'd have over doing it. Like even if he thinks it's for the greater good, saves a bunch of people,
Yeah.
he will forever. Like imagine that conversation with Han and Leia.
Yeah. It would have had a great impact.
It would have. Yeah.
Yeah, a fantastic impact.
Friend
It
love.
had a great impact.
Love this guy.
Probably.
Killing his students.
Killing student to nephews too.
What Jedi would you like to have been a Padawan for?
Ooh.
Oh, this was Taylor's question, by the way. She
Oh,
gave
yeah?
she gave me
that's
that
a
one.
great question.
Who would I like to learn most from?
Who? What? Yeah.
Easy.
Go for it.
Ahsoka.
Ooh, that's good.
You want to be Sabine?
I want to be Sabine.
You want to learn
with force power.
You want to
Okay.
learn the world between worlds. I'd
The
probably
world
say
between
Ezra.
worlds. Ezra?
Just kidding. That's a good one though.
That
Ahsoka.
would-
Learn
that's
from
who I
would pick.
Ahsoka.
Mhm.
I
That
like
would
that.
be cool.
I think
Probably Balin.
Of course. Why not?
yeah, a little Shinhati.
Yeah.
I think I would like
Dooku.
Palpatine.
Dooku.
Palpatine.
Probably Plagueis. Then I'll kill him and learn immortality and take over.
and live forever.
No, I think I would like.
That's
to
a
be,
good one though.
I think I would
Ahsoka's
like
good.
to learn from Qui-Gon.
Qui-Gon.
Because
Qui-Gon.
I think Qui-Gon has this fun like occasionally bending of the here's the idea behind the rule though.
Yeah.
Like that type of
Yeah.
Right.
less in the box. Like I think it'd be motivating or encouraging seeing a master who I feel like, oh man, cool. Like you recognize the rigidity of the council sometimes,
Mhm.
where I think once Qui-Gon's gone, I think Obi-Wan does his best with Anakin, but Anakin's
Yeah.
constantly like butting up against them, and there's not that person that maybe he also sees that's in his corner that's also it's kind
Yeah.
of more of Obi-Wan just saying like, please Anakin, just focus and get in line, like
Mhm.
and this will work out
Yeah.
for you, which it's maybe it's refreshing sometimes to
Yeah.
see someone like
Yeah.
Qui-Gon who's like, yeah, I think this is what a real Jedi would do, and so I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also maybe keep this quiet from the council today, or let me smooth this
I'm
over
going to
with
pass
the,
that on.
Yeah.
with a high order when I talk to him later, or something like that.
I
think
like
that's-
both of those. My first thought was Qui-Gon.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan, I thought that maybe wouldn't be too bad, but then I realized the one shot he had at it didn't turn out
Didn't
too well.
turn out
So,
great.
yeah, my first thought was Qui-Gon. What TV show would you like to see most?
Oh, probably Breaking Bad. If I
Breaking
could get
Bad
more
is my
Breaking Bad,
favorite.
would be
Yeah.
I want to see a Scooby-Doo remake.
Scooby-Doo with Kanan Jarrus leading.
Kanan,
the James Gunn. James
James
Gunn
Gunn?
did Scooby-Doo the movie.
he
That
did.
was James Gunn.
Of course he
Forget about
did.
That. I'm excited to see Superman. I've heard the
Yeah.
reviews
I
are-
am
are Very
too.
good.
Yeah.
Should Qui-Gon have ever trained Anakin? Very good question here. Well,
Oh.
it is interesting that there's a number of things George Lucas did in the prequels that kind of that recontextualizes things from the original trilogy. Meaning one of the main ones is just you fought in the Clone Wars and like before the Dark Time, like it feels like that was 50 years
Before
ago,
the
but it was
Dark
like
Time.
19 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because that would be me today as a 33-year-old being like, do you remember, I was like, yeah, no, I very much
What do you
remember
mean?
being 14. Like it wasn't 100 years ago. Like I remember 19 years ago. Like, do I remember every moment of it? No, but if you were like, do you remember playing 8th and 9th grade basketball? Like, yeah, I wasn't like an infant. I have fully formed memories of that time. Like, I don't know why that seems
Yeah.
like it's ages ago.
You
that-
remember
Yeah.
that?
the fact that people are like, you're the last of that religion in the original trilogy is
Yeah.
always interesting because you're like, Tarkin, you're like 70 now. You were 50,
Yeah.
and there was Jedi all over the place. Like this,
Mhm.
you were in. We learned from the Clone Wars show, you worked side by side with them for many
Right.
years.
Right.
To now kind of put up like you're the last of that religion, almost like it's a myth, that type of a thing. Even though you're there with obviously with Vader, but like that's an extinct thing. Like that was much more
Wasn't
recent
that
than we
long
knew.
ago.
Yeah.
But for the training of what was the question?
This guy.
What
Should,
TV show would you like? No, I'm just kidding.
should Qui-Gon have
Oh yeah,
trained
so
Anakin?
so where I was going with that was him being too young is always interesting because you're like, he's 9, and they're like, you're too young. And you're like, oh, we just saw Luke that was like 17 being trained.
You mean too
Right.
old?
Oh, sorry, him being
Too
too
old,
old.
yeah.
Him being too old, and people being like, well, it's that's hard because he's too old. He shouldn't be trained. Luke was 17 and was being trained. Now, having said that, I do know what ends up happening in the prequel trilogy, and there's a good argument that
Yeah, I think it's
Anakin
more
was too
about.
old because they trained Luke because it was a necessity.
Mhm.
Now,
think
having said that, they watched Luke for many years, and they didn't at age 7 go, Luke, we got to train now because if you get too old, you're gonna have
Yeah.
these attachments and everything. They didn't intervene
No.
until later. Which
I
is
think it's
interesting.
more
I
about
would argue
Yoda
that's
saying
the
like
best way
how
to do
he
it.
sensed fear and
Well, he sensed fear in the way it's framed is fear because you have fear of loss because you've gotten so old now that you have this connection to your mom that if you're 5, you'll have or 4,
Yeah.
you have a
which
connection
is
there that's-
exactly what happened.
Yeah, he has a
Mhm.
fear of loss for Padme, and
Yeah.
obviously
Yeah.
it leads to a lot of destruction. So,
Yep.
do I think he should have trained him? Yes, because it leads to a lot of hurt and heartache, but he also takes out Palpatine in the end. You have to remember at the end of
Mhm.
at the end
Yeah.
of Return of the Jedi.
That's right.
So who knows what Palpatine, as awful as it was, who knows what it would have been
Yeah.
like without Anakin Skywalker.
Could have been.
Do you have another one?
I do.
Okay. What you got?
This is my
remembered it.
last one here.
Should,
last two.
should
and then I'll
Star
have to go
Wars
here.
be continue to do TV shows or just be a movie franchise?
Ooh.
I think there's room for both. I think they're working out the kinks of what that balance is supposed to be.
Mhm.
I think they went all in with the Disney Plus. Let's get out a ton of Star Wars content, and in the meantime, let's do that while we're still trying to shuffle to figure out what the next film's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once they finally get over that hurdle of getting films back out there,
Yeah.
getting things going again, that it can find a good balance between the film and TV.
I think so.
Yeah, I think
Um,
the reality is without the shows, you get way less Star Wars. It's less frequent.
Yeah.
I would like to see them lean.
And we've had
lean
great
heavy.
shows.
Yeah, and I'd like
Yeah.
to see them lean heavy now into the film stuff. So like, if you're saying
Yeah.
all the eggs were kind of in the TV basket, I'd like to see most of those switch to the film, just because I'm now craving for more film.
Mm-hmm.
But also like in between these films, I'd love to see like once a year,
Mhm.
like a new Star Wars
Yeah.
show come out.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I'd take more than that, but I understand they're not going to have 3 shows a year and also a movie and 3 shows a year.
And we
also
don't
a
need
movie.
to make the TV shows like the movies.
Yes, exactly. I
There
think
should be room to be
Yeah.
different. TV
Nate,
shows need
last
to
one,
be
then
different.
I gotta roll. here.
Reports that Mandalorian and Grogu may become a trilogy if the film is successful at the box office. Are we excited about that possibility?
So I wrote this one because I had heard.
Oh yeah.
I saw some reports about it, which is understandable that it's a big merchandising opportunity. It's a big, they're popular characters, and that of course, if this first movie crushes it, that they would be open to making
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
Are you, when you think of more Mando and Grogu, are you excited at the possibility of more movies of that right now? Or are you thinking like, oh, I'd love to have the one, and then I'm kind of excited for Starfighter and those things, and then if another one comes a few years later, great, of course I'm open to that. Or
Yeah.
what do you think? I just feel like we have so many things announced.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
My
wouldn't
So
say
many
I'm
trilogies.
excited about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Not
I'm
as much for
mixed.
me either.
I think it could be. I think I have to see the first one
Yeah.
first. But I think if I see it and I'm like, oh, this kind of blew me away. This is a lot
Mhm.
more than I was expecting, and I would love to see where this story goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More.
Or this particular part of it goes, then I would
Mhm.
say yes. If they tell a full story, like if they kind of wrap it up pretty well,
Yeah.
then I could see it being like, yeah, I was pretty satisfied with how
Yeah.
how the Mandalorian and Grogu story kind of concludes in the movie. Then I'd be like, I'm excited to move on to other things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if it's at the extent of not making something else, because that is what happens. You have a
Mhm.
budget, and
Yeah.
if that means they're not making other films because they're pushing out 2 more Mandalorian and Grogu
I
films,
wouldn't want
then
that.
Yeah.
maybe
Nate,
not.
wrap
but
us up here. Where
there
should
you
people
have it.
find us? Sorry for the hard
Um,
stop. I got to roll.
No, let us know your guys' thoughts. Let us know what you're excited about. If you've got good questions, would you rather's from the helmet, drop them in the comments after this, and we'll try and bring them up next time. If you made it this far, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and smash the notification bell. Let us know your thoughts on Rian Johnson in the interview in The Last Jedi. We'll catch you guys in the next one, and as always, may the Force be with you.
Did you ever hear of the tragedy of the live stream that stopped halfway through? I thought not. It's not a story that
I
Star Wars
thought not.
guys would tell you. They would pretend that it was going the entire time. you
Mark
see,
Hamill.
but,
would say,
do it. Subscribe. Hit smash it. We love to smash the
Smash it,
notification
subscribe.
bell.
Like
We
a
love the
dog.
bell.
Lightsabers.